Thanks, Tanya. Good evening, 7:02. Welcome to the May 2022 meeting of the Special Committee on Racial Equity. Margaret Dell, I'm the chair, and we're joined by members Bob Bender, Camelia Tepelis, Ramdat Singh, and that makes up the current committee members on the board. What to expect for community members. We have a number of items on the agenda that you saw that came out from the office. I apologize, I dropped the ball and did not officially have the agenda out there. It was sent out in the last minutes, but to make it nice and pretty, so I apologize to the office for that. We do have an agenda, and then we usually go back and forth, and usually towards the end, unless there's a comment on something related to the agenda from the community, we usually allow board members to go back and forth and talk about the work at hand. Definitely, if there's a community conversation, we want people to chime in and share their opinions and their thoughts, and sometimes their emotions behind whatever might be discussed. However, when it comes to the work, we usually have the back and forth between committee members, and then wait till the end for community feedback and response. So that's sort of what to expect from tonight's meeting. So today we have a lot to get through. Hi, Julia. Nice to see you. And today we have a number of things to get through, and I did put the community piloting project up at the very top of the agenda. That's just how it was left from last meeting, to identify what the apple is, how to compare apples to apples from our district in the Bronx, the community board, comparing it to other community boards, comparing it to the Bronx overall, and then perhaps comparing the Bronx to Manhattan and the resources. One of the ideas from last time, I think it was Bob Fanuzzi, who thought maybe sanitation might be a good option to explore as a pilot or as an apple, if you will. So Camelia, Bob is not here yet. I haven't heard from him that he won't be joining us, but do you all feel like you'd be able to speak to this, or should we wait until Bob joins us? Camelia, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Hopefully we haven't lost you yet. Okay. I guess we will wait to hear from Bob and Camelia. So the
Margaret, I
Yeah.
apologize. I had some sound issues and I couldn't hear you like the first 5 minutes of this meeting. So I just joined right now. Give me a couple of minutes to further adjust my logistics and with you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so then we'll go to the mapping update. I will share with folks the mapping update that I finalized, well, not finalized, that I finished up. I'm going to share my screen so that you all can see. I did also send, the office did send out this map with the minutes. Oh, Tanya, can you make me co-host?
Hi, you're all set,
Hi.
Margaret. Hi,
Okay, cool thing.
you're welcome. Hi, everyone.
Okay. So here is an updated map. While I do this, I should probably pause this. and just bring up the other document that includes the map or the key so that folks can follow along. I don't know, I did not share the key with the office because it's still a draft. And I also used as an opportunity to vet some questions with committee members that we could talk about tonight. One which I can't seem to find. So let me just live with what we have here. Okay. And now, of course, my dogs have joined me, so it should be pretty vocal. Okay, so here's the map. Hopefully you can see it. I'm on my home laptop, which is not as great as my work computer, which is often easier to see. But so I finished basically fiscal year 16 to fiscal year 23. And you can see where some of the mapping is. I made a mistake. I initially had clustered some of the Bailey projects closer to the reservoir, and basically the other day it just occurred to me as I was walking through the neighborhood, and I was like, wait a minute, I put all of those in the wrong spot. So I do have to move some of this cluster here, which is closer to the reservoir, much further down towards 87 and sort of this area over here. So this cluster will move a little bit further west on the page. So it is hard for folks to see, but I definitely will be sharing the key after this meeting and share it with the minutes from this meeting. But I did want to hear from any committee members on some of their thoughts regarding this mapping. So as you can see, I attempted to indicate the fiscal year, which committee it was coming from, and then what the request was. So daylighting Tibbetts Brook, these all seem to be clustered, you know, in one specific area. I attempted to put the Van Cortlandt VCP Stadium in one area. And then there were some other, obviously, parks erosion from Ewan Park, and then Spite and Dival, et cetera, et cetera. There were a couple of outliers, like there was a request for sanitation here from fiscal year 22. And while this was about serving the entire community board itself, this request seemed to be coming to sanitation for the 215th Street garage rehabilitation, which is obviously outside of our district. So I just left that there as an outlier, and you know, I'd love to hear from anyone else about the overall map and anything else that we should do or adjust, and go from there. Ramdad, I see your hand up.
Hey, Margaret, thank you so much for doing this. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, so yeah, thank you so much for taking this on. I think it's a really good mapping to help set the conversation for fiscal year 24 as well, to look at, you know, where budget items have been. And, you know, I think it's a really good way to showcase all of the budget items in the last 3 fiscal years. So, you know, thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Ramdad. Bob?
Yeah, a couple of things, Margaret. I mean, first of all, I said last month, and I'll say it again, this is an extraordinary piece of work. It really is. And I'm in awe of the fact that you took the time to do it and you actually knew how to do it, which to me is even more astonishing. But, and it immediately visually reveals certain things, as I said last month, that, that many of our requests are clustered around certain areas. Van Cortlandt Park, of course, makes sense, but I was surprised to see Kingsbridge Heights represented as well as it is, for example. And so visually, it's instantly communicates a lot of information. Having the key clearly is essential so that we know how to interpret the colors and, all that sort of thing. With respect to the garage that seems to be, well, not seems to be, but actually is outside of our district, I remember being at the ENS committee meeting where that came up. And it's there only because we discovered that that's the garage out of which the sanitation trucks in our area operate. And so, that's why it's on there, even though it's not in Community Board 8. But again, the amount of information that's contained in this map, once the key is provided,
Where is
is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So thank you for
I'm on a
doing it.
meeting.
Amelia, did you want to say something?
Nope. Like other than the fact that I agree with Bob, I'm now on a much more reliable connection, hopefully. And and just the issue of the legend, as we call it, to indicate the years for all this. I think this is absolutely stunning, and it needs to be in the report. So that's all I have
Okay.
to say.
So this is basically the key that I have. I just highlighted the years, obviously in the color. I'm sure there's a way I can do a split screen, but then for the old folks like me, I can't really read it. So I'm just gonna toggle back and forth between this document and then the map itself. Again, I will share the key, all of, even as people open up the document, as you hover your mouse over it, you should be able to see the comments. I wanted to show them as comments so that folks could see, they're all clustered here together. But as you hold the mouse, you can't really move things around too much, but being patient and holding the mouse over the top will give you a sense of what they are. And again, I tried to cluster things together. So when it was repeat asks, it's all at the same spot. And when there's a separate item that's a little bit further away, I did try to move it around. There were some other things like security cameras, similarly to, how Bob described the sanitation garage is outside of the district, but it serves the district. In the same way that another sort of outlier is sort of each year or maybe several years, we had a number of asks for security cameras in the district. So sometimes I was a specific ask of like, we wanted a 231st and Broadway, we wanted a 242nd, we wanted here, we wanted there. And then other times it was just more security cameras. So there are a couple of notations of security cameras, and then sometimes it's just like one singular dot, similar to like the sanitation dot, if you will. So this is the key here on the right with the colors itself. And, I sort of, from Bob's comment, which I totally agree with, I also wanted to think about some of the reasons or some of the requests that continue to come up, and for us to talk about perhaps ways that we could, depending on, how we want to proceed, but think about ways that we could be influencing or pushing or cajoling individuals to focus on some of these repeat capital projects that are that have been repeatedly requested and remain incomplete. And so I took these as any request that was 5 fiscal years or more. And sometimes the request was at the same spot, like, for instance, a library had a request to repair like the staff lounge, and then it had a separate request to replace their HVAC, and then this and that. So I didn't necessarily count that, even though it was at the same location, but I did count these large capital projects that remain the same year after year. And I just attempted to highlight them so that we could think about them and perhaps speak with our colleagues during budget conversations of how do we really want to use our influence in the community to make sure that these things are addressed. So everyone can see them, but just to quickly highlight: Bailey Avenue Playground, daylighting Tibbetts Brook, VCP Stadium, Park for erosion control, the restroom at 251st Street. There does seem to, and Bob, I kind of wanted to ask you if this is what is there. I know that there is that restroom that's just inside the park near the stables, or behind the stables, if you will. If this is what is considered that restroom, or is there something else that folks had been asking for, an additional restroom sort of in that similar vicinity?
Yeah, this is different, Margaret, and it's actually almost 10 blocks to the south of the one that you're referring to,
Okay.
at West 251st and Broadway. That's more or less in the middle of the parade grounds, on the
Okay.
Broadway side of the parade grounds. And we've been trying to get it for years because the infrastructure is actually there. The pipes are actually there underground, but the restroom itself still has to be constructed. So it's entirely new, and it's there because the parade grounds is such a huge area. And although there are restrooms at the south end of the parade grounds, that's still a fair distance from West 251st Street. Tibbetts Brook, the daylighting of Tibbetts Brook is actually underway. So
Mhm.
that project, I'm very happy to say, finally has reached the point where action is being taken, and that's going to happen. So that's a good story on this list. And the same thing is true of the Strong Street Playground. That project is actually underway. But you know what this list does, Margaret, is it highlights how long it does take to get certain capital projects off the ground, how many times you have to go back to the agencies again and again and say, there's a real need for this. And from a personal point of view, the Bailey Street Playground, which is an expensive undertaking, it's about $5 million. That's just so frustrating that year after year that sits there and everybody agrees that it's something that needs to be done, and yet it never gets funded. So there's great value in this list that you have put together, and thank you for doing it.
What you just mentioned, that was also in a couple of meetings ago. We were talking with the housing committee, and it's sort of a similar, I'm sure the HVAC at Marble Hill and Fort Independence houses is a massive amount of money as well. The housing chair seemed to think, or I think it was reported at the meeting, perhaps it was sort of the super of one of of Marble Hill, who said that the HVAC system is underway and is anticipated to be completed in 2023. So to your point, Bob, we weren't really sure if we should continue to keep that on the top of the budget request just because it was underway, but then I believe Julie Reyes mentioned like we should just keep it on the budget list until it's completed because so many things can fall off individuals' radars. So folks have influenced their radars anyway. So that's good feedback, and that's, I guess I'll just leave this point on boilers and HVAC at Marble Hill and Fort Independence houses on the list and in progress. Camelia?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Margaret, you know, the title on this listing that you have, the bullet points, I mean, I think you said top requested, right? So, but when you look at the listing, what you have between the brackets, it's actually just 3 committees. It's just ENS, Parks, and Housing. So I was just wondering if, I mean, there must be other requests from other committees that would be relevant, right? So I was just wondering if it would be worth listing all of them so that it doesn't appear that only these 3 committees kind of submitted, you know, requests that are relevant to the areas we are concerned about. And second, again, just to point out how, you know, a thing like this kind of has repercussions in other areas. For example, look, there's no economic development on this, but we were discussing just the other day how there is a need of tree guards in the you know, in some of the most sensitive commercial corridors that we have. And we were saying, oh, you know, but the other committees will have all these other requests. Let's not like cram this on. But I'm like, but if we don't cram it, we will never get it. So it's a further argument when I go back to the committee to say, hey, look, we presented in SCRE what were the top requests there. This was never asked. Let's ask. We know the city has a large budget next year. Let's ask. You don't ask, you don't get, right? So again, just to demonstrate, you know, how much value you actually added to this in ways you maybe didn't initially think about. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, so that's all.
Yeah, I think that's, well, maybe 2 to 3 things. One, there are these lists that do include everything. So I am not going to sign up to add everything onto this list, but you are right. I mean, so Spite and Dibble is the last pond wall. That's the last request here that is asked 5 fiscal years or more. And that's why I bubbled them up to the top. And I agree with you that, you know, so these are a couple of observations that I made. One, yes, I agree with you, like the bids, economic development, there really aren't any asks across the board. I think the only ask that was consistent was the security cameras. So to your point, like we want benches, we want beautiful signs. I mean, benches probably maybe are capital, depending on how expensive they are. I really don't have a sense, but like we want this, we want that, we want tree beds, we want et cetera, et cetera. I think that's a good point. And maybe it's the beautification of, you know, the Broadway or Marble Hill corridors, or
yeah, sorry, just to say,
Riverdale,
we weren't
whatever.
even saying bids. We were saying exactly in sectors underserved that do not have bids. And we were asking for tree guards for beautification, for example, like Bailey, like Marble Hill, like, so this underserved, and we were like shy to include them because we were thinking it's too much, but yeah, thank you.
Well, and so I think that's up for debate, like whether we've seen the list from the city where the city's like, yeah, we note your request, thanks. And then they go on to like request number 15 and then request number 30 and then request number 45. And it's still kind of like, who's paying attention to all these requests? So do we want this list of, you know, 20 different things? Who's paying attention? Where are we targeting our efforts? Are we taking this list and then going to the elected officials who show up every month and saying like, where are these on our list of priorities? Or perhaps none of these things come up at participatory budgeting. Who perhaps from the community board could be going to participatory budgeting and asking for council members to focus on a couple of areas because it's coming from 40 different community board members, right? Yeah, I also agree, like TNT, I got lots of beefs about Step Streets. I saw that email about the Ewan Park Step Street and I really had to bite my tongue because I walked down that Step Street earlier in the day. I was like, this is a beautiful Step Street. I understand that's coming from Parks. And I love that the park is getting some TLC, but I walk down the Step Streets that I've been complaining about for years and you can't see your hand in front of your face in November because it's so dark at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. and broken stairs and blah, blah, blah. so one, how are we, do we want to talk about, do people even care? Is this something that we want to facilitate during the budget conversation or with the budget committee whenever it meets? I think it already met. But so what's the most effective way of chasing some of our goals for some of these underserved areas? Why are our, to Bob's point, we have all these asks in these areas that are not getting completed. The asks are right, the asks are necessary, but they're not completed. And so what kind of levers of power do we need to start thinking about in order to get those things done, completed? Is it just we go on a case by case basis? The scope is too large. Like Bob said, Bailey is a massive amount of money. Perhaps there isn't someone in the community who's leading the charge. Perhaps we haven't pushed it high enough in our list of priorities. Maybe when we talk to elected officials, I have my list of step streets. Camelia has her list of tree pits, and Bob wants that piece in the park fixed or whatever it is. And so we're all advocating for different things. So I guess those were some of my initial thoughts, and I just wanted to keep adding to some of your feedback. Bob, sorry if I rambled on too long, please.
Yeah, Margaret, all of these projects are worthy. There's no question about that, whether it's tree guards or renovating a park or HVAC systems in public housing. They're all worthy. They're on a different scale, some of them, but they're certainly all worth doing. The one thing that I think we could be doing and should be doing and should focus on is when the budget priorities are put together, we should really take a very careful look at not just the priorities, but where they're located. Because, that is, that's really where we come in. That's really where we intersect with the budget process. We know pretty well where the underserved communities are. And as we look at the budget priorities, and again, they're all worthwhile, but if we find that they tend to be clustered in certain communities, we really need to focus on that and make sure that the communities that are most in need are showing up high on the capital and expense priorities. That's where I think we intersect with the budget process.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think in the last 2, maybe 3 fiscal years of what was mapped, I definitely see that prioritization of marble, the boiler and HVAC. I think we're at the top of the list the last 2 fiscal years. Then I think, I can't remember exactly, I think Tibbetts, then I think Bailey. So I think, definitely in the last couple of years, there's always been these, like I mentioned, these have always been on the list, but I think they have moved themselves up and they're sort of sitting at the top of the list, which I agree does help. And I think it, in, probably the last few years, and maybe we're sort of just incrementally trending in this direction, but some of our asks are less ad hoc, a space over here and then a space over here and then a space over here, but sort of I guess that was the intent here, to say like, okay, these are consistently the things that are asked for. It's not ad hoc. Oh, we need an HVAC this year. We need a new staff lounge the following year. We need, the gym redone the next year, those sorts of things. But like comprehensively, these are the most important priorities to us. I guess, unless there's anything else from committee members, is there anyone from the public from the community who would want to say anything or contribute anything here? Or ask? Anything that we could be useful to? Okay. I don't see any hands, so. Okay, great. So, I mean, I think I will send some of these questions or observations along to the budget chair. I did send the chair this map, the first iteration of the map. I'm sure he got the second iteration of the map, and so I'll also send him some of these observations as well. I'll try to send him the most user-friendly version of the map for his consideration.
Margaret,
Okay,
I would
yeah.
include the board chair, Laura Spalter, as well as David,
Okay,
when you do that.
okay, sounds good. Okay, next, community-based organizations. I know, did anyone see this list come out from the office asking for board members' feedback yet? I know that they didn't want to use the Google Docs because they thought there were going to be too many edits or folks would have a hard time with the edits. So they were just going to send it out and have community board members send it back to them directly, and then they'd take the edits. I haven't seen anything. Have you all? Okay, I'll follow up with the office then. Okay. You know, one thing we talked about last time was, I might be jumping around the agenda here. Oh, interim report update. Did Camelia, did you want to share anything?
Sure. Just to let you know, I did have a call with Julie Reyes, and we sort of shared thoughts of what we think is basically achievable by the end of this year. And I think we are very much along the same lines of thinking. We did set up another follow-up call after to take place after this meeting and before next month. Also, I had a call with Robert Bofanuzzi, and we discussed a couple of ideas about sanitation and digging into some data. I'm not very certain that we weren't a little bit overly ambitious on that, but I will try my best to coordinate further with him and bring you something. And other than that, I do think that even Margaret, like with the amount of work you put into this elevates the report to a much higher level. So even if we compile this, you know, and manage to input it into the text of the report as it is and give it like a proper flow along with the demographic information we discussed last month, I think this is already a very solid 2.0 report, to put it that way. Oh, also I reached out to the Bronx BP, the Bronx Borough President's office, to inquire when they expect the next report on the community board demographics, and I did get a response for July 1st. So I think it's probably another conversation to have whether we want to basically wait and issue the 2.0 version of the report in September to be able to incorporate that information, or if not, what as you think best. We are good enough, I think, with issuing a 2.0 version by the end of the whatever June 30th with the information that Margaret already produced. So these are my updates.
Okay, cool. One thing that came up at the last meeting that I wanted to come back to was this, well, two things. One, it was part of the proposed resolution that I presented last month, and it was basically the Bronx Community Board 8 proudly represents residents and the interconnectedness, et cetera, et cetera. I heard, what I heard during the meeting was that a number of committee members felt as though it wasn't necessarily as inclusive as it needs to be. And so I was wondering if there's anyone on the committee who would like to take a shot at expanding it. I think there were some, yeah, it wasn't only, I mean, I think the proposed resolution lifted it directly from the CB8 website. So I think it is something that we've been using. It's sort of like become this paragraph over a number of iterations with various resolutions that SCREE has proposed in the last several years. And so I think it's just evolved from, quite honestly, all the various hate crimes and terrible things that have gone on in the world that we've highlighted in SCREE. So I was just wondering if there's anyone who felt as though they wanted to give this a new, fresh set of eyes and make it more inclusive. I think religion was one thing that folks brought up, and whatever else. Maybe it needs to be broader and less specific. Open to anything.
Margaret, I would be happy to do it, but frankly, I think everybody on the committee ought to take a look at that particular part of the report. And you know, really, that's a key element of what we do, and I really think everybody ought to take a look at it. So while I'm happy to do it, I don't for a minute pretend that that I've got the 360-degree view of the community board or of the community more specifically. And I'm sure I will catch some things, and I'm sure I will miss some things. So I would feel much more comfortable if everybody was doing this as well. It's not a big investment of time, so I think that's a reasonable request.
Okay, I can add it to a Google document and send it that folks can work on in their individual time.
Yeah, I think that's the ticket. It really is. We should all look it over.
Okay. Then the last thing, let's see, I need to share again. The last thing I wanted to, here it is, to just go over today is that the resolution that I presented last meeting, I added on some data from the 2019 report, like Camelia just mentioned. We're still waiting on the data from 2021 from the borough president's office. With a new borough president, it makes a lot of sense that, they're still working on it. But I just thought it helped from a context standpoint, looking at some of this data so that we could see where we were trending over time. And I think there are some things that are moving sort of in a positive direction, and some things that still sort of stand out. There are some things around housing that were unpublished in the 2019 report. With the new borough president, I'm not sure how she will approach this report and which demographics will be included, but I just offer this up as something that I added in the interim between the last meeting and today. So I just wanted to bring it up, and I'm sure Camelia and Julie will take a look at it and see if they want to include it into the SCREE report. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Camelia.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, as far as the resolution itself, I mean, I would be absolutely 100% comfortable with Bob's sort of edits or suggestions. And I do think that our bid result has to be a little bit more, how should I call it? Diplomatic. Because our recommendation is to nominate a more aligned representation of our community democrats with membership of the community board. So I do think we could put it in a nicer way, essentially. And one thing I wanted to bring up, though, in relation to this is, other than keeping an eye on these reports, as we already clearly started doing, asking formally the office to provide community this information as a direct link from our website, from our community. It's a matter of transparency. And I recommend to all of you, I could send you links to Community Board 11, where they have not only each members, obviously, like the list of people, but they also have these statistics of percentages straight on the website. So you don't have to click further link and open a PDF document and go to page 35. It's right there who this community board is. And I think that's a question of transparency, of openness. And I think we could very easily do that. Not to mention that they also have, like, you can click on a board member's name, and a little bio opens up with the face. This is all voluntary, of course. If there's somebody that doesn't want their face on the website, sure. But you see what I'm saying? It gives people an information of who we are and a little bit about us. And it's a lot more than I know about some of my fellow community board members, unless I Google them or something. So, but the issue of the percentages and transparency, I think it's very vital to Community Board 8, showing we are open, this is who we are, according to public data. We are not asking nobody for nothing. This is according to public data already published by the Bronx BP. So just wanted to make sure I mentioned this kind of for everybody's consideration. Maybe we can start it from next year. I'm not saying now in 2 months that are left, we have to do it, but I think it's something we definitely should push for. And I will send you links to the Community Board 11 in the Bronx that does this, so that you kind of can see a little bit the format.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Margaret and Camelia, as long as we're using public data, I think that's fine. People get nervous when they feel like they're going to be identified, or they're going to be asked questions that they're uncomfortable with, whether it's about, their religion or their sexual orientation or their wealth or anything else. So, as long as we're respectful, I think this is admirable to do. And, we should really know, how representative is the community board of the community. It's always, I will say this, I've said it before, I will say it again. It's never going to be completely representative. It's always going to skew older, better educated, and wealthier than the community board as a whole, because those are the people who have both the time and the ability to volunteer their time and serve on something like a community board. But, just the same, it should be fairly representative of the community. It should not be badly skewed in relation to the community as a whole. So it is a perfectly legitimate enterprise, but it is the sort of thing where, we really want to be diplomatic and careful about it.
100% in agreement. Only public data, only data provided voluntary, that's already out there and compiled, not by us, but by others, actually by the Bronx BP's office. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you, Bob.
that's where this data is coming from. This is not coming from Margaret Della's research shop or anything. This is publicly held data that I don't know how they got it. Maybe they just take it from the applications and people have already offered it up. But this is the borough president's publication, as noted in the document. The other thing is, I mean, and perhaps this is me sort of in my own interpretation of things, but there does become a point where so I think I've been pretty candid with that I'd like to see us being more intentional about voices heard at the community board level. So whether that means, sort of echoing the intent of encouraging a more diverse community board representation more aligned with the demographics of our community. And then, so that's one thing. And I do feel as though, I understand rules and protocols and that, we want to be 100% respectful of the borough president, and in no way am I giving any elected official any sort of advice in any sort of personal way, but there are some areas where we can do better, that we can be more representative of the community. And so it sort of gives me a sense of frustration when that is an intent, that is something that we've talked about, and it is a disputed, it's not a consensus-based opinion, that other people feel different ways about it. But to then also have the conversation with LRE where OML, open meetings law does not require the community to participate. It's of the chair's prerogative, or the chairs, however they choose to lead their meetings. So from SPREE's point of view, the conversations that we've had, our intent, or sort of what some of the opinions at SPREE meetings have been, is that, well, chairs have the opportunity to welcome everyone from the community in the standing committee meetings and offer up their opinion. And then from the LRE conversations that we've been having, LRE says, well, it's the chair who gets to decide. And so the intent, I think, for most chairs is that we want to hear from everyone and we want it to be a community conversation. But there does tend to be this sort of like contradiction in what we're saying. And that to me is confusing. I think people have been pretty candid with their frustration of perhaps my naivete. But to me, as someone who I feel like I'm still trying to get to understand the community board, it is something that's confusing to me. And so where do we stand on it? And how is it that we intentionally want to have broader conversations? So if the community board members do skew in this direction, Bob, like I totally understand what you're saying. It makes perfectly logical sense. Then where does the balance come in? If the balance is then, okay, so then it's not, so OML says it's up to the chair's discretion, and it's our, perhaps our community board's preference that the chair always welcomes, in the standing committees, always welcomes feedback from the community. Again, this is perhaps just my newness to the community board, but to me, I find it confusing.
Well, Margaret, it is up to the chairs of the committees at their meetings to encourage people to participate. Whenever we have a real hot button issue, just recently, for example, when we had the issue of DOT wanting to reconfigure Riverdale Avenue, I mean, we had a tremendous number of people on Zoom that evening and a lot of community input. It does vary, obviously, from committee to committee and from issue to issue. But there is no, so far on the community board, we have not found any other way to do this other than to the extent possible to open up committee meetings to encourage people to participate. At the same time, nobody wants a meeting to start at 7 o'clock and go on until midnight. That just doesn't benefit anybody, frankly. So it's, this is not an easy issue. I think the real answer there is that it is the outreach that has to come from the board itself to the community. We have to do, we really have to be at the top of our game and be as effective as we can be through social media, whether it's Facebook or any of the other social media, to make sure that people know that the community board is there, that our job is to hear the concerns of the community, and that they have a way to access the community board and make their concerns known. That's the best way in which we can broaden our reach to the community, as far as I'm aware.
Julia?
Yeah, just wanted to echo what you had said. That's something that I've always struggled with. And to take it a step further is, I believe the current interpretation is that if you're not a member of that committee, even if you're on the community board, it's at the chair's discretion whether or not you can participate. And that's always been very striking to me in terms of, I've been fortunate that I'm no longer on health hospitals, but when there has been something that I have a knowledge base in, people have allowed me to speak, but I still have to be allowed to speak. And that kind of seems like a conflicting message, is we want all this participation. I think maybe we just need to clean up the wording or something. I'm not sure. Because the other side, there are some topics and some spaces where you have 500 or 300 people now that we're doing Zoom meetings to, who want to speak about a housing project. It's not manageable to give everybody, but I think we can get closer. I've been thinking about this a lot. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I think we can get closer in terms of, like we do with the full board, maybe registering, or I don't know. But I think the language might need to be a little bit more consistent, because we want participation when we allow it, or at my discretion. And if I'm having a cranky pants day, I may not be my best self, and that's not fair to the other people who came to participate. So I don't know.
Camelia?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with both Bob and Julia, but I just wanted to make sure nobody misses actually an email that was sent today, this morning, from the office, from Martin, our LRE chair, that actually after probably 3 or 4 LRA meetings that he solicited input, decided to go forward and actually created a sort of guidelines document for chairs of committees, exactly addressing this issue, because we had problems. So I'm happy that that is out there, but I just wanted none of you to miss it. It's just 1 page, and I do believe it's quite good. I want to stress very strongly the point that Bob made, that I made, I think, at the beginning of COVID, and not to great popularity with the use of social media. There are other community boards that like broadcast live on internet a meeting such as this one is running on Facebook, and I can watch it on my phone, you know what I mean? And I do think we have to make a little bit of progress in that direction. Having said that, my expectations are for the low-hanging fruits in terms of OML. I do feel like even the fact of having the agendas posted, including the resolutions that are going to be voted in a full board meeting in advance. Like if you click right now on the May agenda in the community board, you will see just 1 page of the agenda. We better have no resolution whatsoever. Let's see. You see what I'm saying? Just this very low hanging fruit of simply complying with OML. And I'm sorry, but if the practice of wordsmithing in exec undermine our compliance with the law, we should reduce wordsmithing and upgrade compliance with the law. So see, if I'm a community board member, if I'm a local resident waking up today when it's a full community board meeting and I want to check the website to see what do these people discuss, I should have that information. I shouldn't need to be on the district manager's email list. So I think we have, up until tackling the very significant issue of community members input in meetings, we do have a way to go in simply compliance with the mandatory requirements of OML. And having the minutes there on the website within 15 days. I was just checking today for a related reason, housing. I mean, there are only 2 minutes documents. I refuse to believe that housing didn't meet this year more than 2 times. I bet they did, but I think the minutes are not there on the website. So just wanted to point that out.
All right. Camelia is going to work that into every meeting.
Will increase my popularity. Yeah, thank you.
Point taken. I'm gonna start to get other people to write the minutes too, so, let's see. The agenda, I've lost you. Yeah, I think that concludes old business. Is there any new business that you'd like to address? I was curious if anyone from the community wanted to say anything or wanted to bring up anything. Part of me wanted to talk about the draft ruling from the Supreme Court that was leaked. But it is to potential. It is, obviously it has life-changing consequences for all of us. But since it is just a draft and has not been decided upon, I did not think for us to spend hours of our life. There's a lot of talking heads and there's a lot of things to worry about, but do you all feel similarly, or is there anything else that you'd like to discuss tonight?
Can I add one quick thing? Bob, I apologize, but just to add to the point, remember we were discussing last time and you kind of brought it once again now with the how representation would always be skewed on the side of sort of for community board members to be on the side of like older, probably whiter and more affluent kind of demographics. So funnily enough, right before this meeting, both myself and Margaret were in the nominating committee meeting, and one of the nominating committee members even raised the issue of, how we should ask members that want to be chairs of committees to have in mind including an audience that does not have sufficient representation for, and he was giving exactly the example of sort of younger people and people that are not normally inclined to speak up, like that kind of thing. So that's kind of just wanted to make this point here because it linked to what we discussed last time and to what you raised today, but just to say how nice it is to actually be in a community board where in the nominating committee, you see what I'm saying? Somebody brought up exactly this thing. And I'm sure that our conversations like have that kind of sort of spillover in other committees. And it was something I heard and it was like so nice to, you see what I'm saying? To hear the type of recognition. And yeah, because that to me shows an intent, at least in scrutinizing one's ability to chair by their openness to be inclusive and actually encouraged sections of our demographics that maybe are not normally addressed to actually like speak up and participate. So just wanted to add that.
No, I'm glad to hear that, Camelia, because, I really do believe there has been, first of all, there has obviously been a change in the culture in the last few years. I think more awareness of diversity and of the fact that certain voices are not heard and certain people are not represented and respected, and that has become part of the community board as well. I think in the last couple of years, this committee exists because of the change in the culture and an awareness that the community board itself has to be, as the expression goes, part of the solution and not part of the problem. And I think that is a legitimate expectation for a committee chair, to be somebody who recognizes that, yes, there's a great big community out there, and we want to encourage the voices in the community to speak up. So I'm glad to hear that the nominating committee is seeing that as a qualification for becoming a chair of a committee. That's the way it ought to be. And I really do believe that this board in part because of the mere fact of the existence of this committee. But, you know, the fact that we meet and we periodically remind everybody that we exist and what our purpose is, I think that has been beneficial for the community board. And, you know, I'm glad that we set up this committee in the first place. And I'm glad that it functions as it does, and it should continue. So thank you. I'm very encouraged to hear what you said about the nominating committee meeting.
Okay, wonderful. All right, going once, going twice.
No,
anything
Margaret.
else?
Margaret, I don't believe we have approved the minutes of the
Oh.
March meeting.
You lifesaver, you. Thank you, Bob. Do I have a motion? I guess, Bob, that was your motion. Do I have a
Yes,
second?
that was my motion to approve.
Happy to second.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed?
Mhm.
I'm not looking at the screen. Any opposed? No. Okay, wonderful. We have a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Wonderful. All right,
Second if needed.
thank you so much. Have a great night. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all who celebrate. And hope you enjoyed today. It's a beautiful day.
Thank you, Margaret. Good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Happy
Margaret.
Mother's Day to you,
everyone.
sis.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.